Hello, and thanks so much for tuning in to Clear into Balance. My name is Jamie. On this channel, I remind you that you are a powerful spirit having this human experience, and therefore you have the potential to change or create anything you want, and I mean anything. So today I want to talk about, that time when people are looking for jobs and they're not finding what they want, and it can be nerve-wracking, and maybe you end up taking something that you don't want, or maybe right now you're someone who is trying to choose a job or choose what direction you want to take, and you're kind of at a loss because you know what you want, but you also see the listings and the job postings and you feel like nothing is super aligned with you right now and you don't know which one to pick. So it's like you might be more inclined to pick the one that gives you the most money per hour or whatever salary, and sometimes that's just not the best choice. And I want to share my experience of what it was like prior to finding my last job and where I was coming from, and also like how I landed in a job that was such a perfect fit and was exactly what I had been asking my spirit for. So, yeah, I'll start off. So, I'm kind of rewinding from where I'm at right now. But when I moved to my current city to be near family, I sold and gave away most of what I owned. I was driving across country and I knew I didn't want more than a carload. I didn't want to deal with like a U-Haul. I didn't even have anything like worthy of shipping or bringing back here, and I didn't have a home that I was moving to, so I was just winging life. I knew that I couldn't stay where I was because it was just everything kept basically pushing me out. It got down to just being like living with my bosses and them thinking that I was going to get to stay at a friend's house they had who was out of town for maybe even a year, and like they let me stay with them, which was so nice. And that all just fell through with the rental after that. So I had to make some big decisions and change things in my life in a drastic way. And I came back to be with family because I was just kind of like, it was the holidays, and I naively thought that my spirit was just bringing me back here for the holidays, which ended up not being the case. Once I got back here, I was staying with family, and I realized, like, man, I need money. Like, I'm going to need to get a job. And so I started looking, and the job postings here, it was just like all your typical things like office work, retail, restaurants, all the typical things that you typically find, that you typically find on Indeed or, these online search engines now. And, I'm looking and I'm thinking of my previous work experience and my skills and what I enjoy doing, and also like money and like what the jobs are posting at making, and all of these things were going into account when I was looking at what I was going to do next. I was really nervous about taking anything full-time, although that was my plan, because I hadn't worked full-time for someone else in years. I literally did part-time gigs while I also then did holographic kinetic sessions part-time for people, and that was my livelihood. And until all the stuff of 2020 hit and a lot of people lost their jobs, mine included, that's how I was living my life. And then once that happened and I wasn't willing to budge on what I believed in for myself, I had to shift and change things, and a lot changed in my life. So coming here, I was just looking for something that, I could make money, but I wanted to be able to enjoy it. I was really nervous that I was going to end up living to work, which I really don't want to do anymore in my life. I don't want a job to just take over my whole schedule, my whole life, and have it be all about that. I don't like the way I feel when I'm just like, wake up, go to work, go home, eat dinner, go to bed. Wake up, go to work, go home, eat dinner, go to bed. And just having like the weekend. I just don't like living that way at all. So I was nervous because I was like, God, what's it even like to work like 40 hours a week anymore? Like with the version that I was at that time of myself, like what is it even going to be like? Like how is that going to feel? And I was looking into things like it came down between two jobs essentially. I applied for other ones, but the ones that it was coming down to was between a chiropractic assistant in a local chiropractic office and Trader Joe's. And the funny thing is like, what ended up happening, and I told my spirit beforehand, I was like, look, just make it really obvious. Like, before I went in for my interview for the chiropractor, I was just like, just make it really obvious if this job is for me or not. Like, if this is going to be the best match for me. Now, the funny thing is, prior to going to that interview, I actually talked to somebody from Trader Joe's on the phone and really loved the sound of things and loved generally what I was hearing about the schedule. And I had been shopping there for a long time, and I always had good experiences when I went into the store. So like, I felt really good about it. I knew generally the vibe to expect from that job, and I was really feeling it with the person that I talked to. Like, I connected with them. I felt like the conversation just flowed. And so I still went to the interview for the chiropractic assistant because I had done that in the past. I enjoy helping people in holistic ways. That's not just like giving them meds. And so, in that way, I was just like, oh, it'd be cool to like work with someone who's helping people more holistically and this and that. But at the same time, before I went into that interview, like, I almost knew I wanted to work at Trader Joe's instead. But the chiropractic assistant was posted at starting out at a couple dollars more an hour than Trader Joe's. So that was all weighing into it as well. But I told my spirit on my way in, I was like, okay, make this obvious. First thing was, I walked in and it was boring. It was so boring in the office. Everything was gray. Literally, the walls were a light gray. The furniture was gray. There was just like no artwork up, no inspiration. I felt no inspiration in that space. But what hit me right away, aside from that, just the bland office, was they were playing country music. Look, I like all kinds of music. Country music is not one of them. I can totally respect like Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash, the old greats, things like that. And I've listened to them, and I've gone to Willie Nelson and seen him play, and it was one of the best concerts of my life. However, I don't want to listen to country music all day. So that was like strike one, and I'm like, okay, spirit, I'm paying attention. And then like, I sat there, I had to fill out some paperwork prior to my interview, and I remember just waiting and then kind of seeing, how things were working, like what people were doing, what the energy of people was, what the energy of the space was, taking all that into account. Had my interview. It was fine. It wasn't great. It was fine. I didn't feel like much of a connection with the chiropractor, but I was like, okay, whatever. At the end, he had me go out and sit in the lobby taking this personality test. And as I sat there, once I took it, which it was pretty extensive, but once I took it, I asked one of the women there, how long she had worked there, and she told me however long it had been. And I was like, do you like working here? And she goes like this, yeah, I like it. And I was like, okay, I've heard everything that I need to know. And I left like feeling into it, still giving it like thought, but pretty much knowing this wasn't going to be the place for me. So in the whole process, like, I didn't have an interview set up with Trader Joe's until a few days later. So I didn't even know if I was going to get that job. I didn't know how things were going to go, even if I would get the chiropractic job or not. But as I felt into it, I was like, you know what? I'm removing myself from the running of that job. Like, I don't want to work there. I wasn't feeling it. It felt pretty obvious to not take that job. But I knew in doing that, the wages posted anyway for Trader Joe's showed that I would make at least like $2 less than that job an hour. And so it felt like, okay, like, whatever. I don't care. I would rather work in a positive environment than make more money and work somewhere that I'm just not feeling it. So that's what I went with. This is important. This is so important, to not just let money be your deciding factor in your choices. Because what happened next was really awesome, in that I go, I have the interview with Trader Joe's. It was one of the best interviews of my life. In fact, I was like, if I don't get this job, like, I can't ever work at any Trader Joe's because it went so well. I was just like, I'm missing the mark in a way I don't understand if I don't get this job. The conversation flowed. I loved the people that interviewed me. It was just very, like, such good energy. Just felt so good about it. And it was just so natural. And the head of the store was just awesome. In fact, I felt like I could have just stayed and talked to him for like hours. We had a lot of things in common, a lot of interest in common. And I was like really genuinely interested to hear more about his life and what he had done in the past. But at any rate, like, so that went by and I asked them like, oh, when am I going to find out? And they said 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, man, I needed a job like yesterday, but okay, whatever, you know? So I leave. They end up calling me the next day and offering me the job. And my starting wage was above the starting for the chiropractic assistant. And then it was so cool because I ended up like, look, it was like the best crew, the best boss I've ever had. The job flexibility there was amazing. The schedule allowed me to travel whenever I wanted, to change my schedule when things like concerts would come up or my family's like birthday parties would come up. I could change my schedule and they would totally allow that every single week. And I had so much flexibility, but I also had some of the best coworkers and literally just spent so much time in that job. So fast forwarding past getting it and being there, but just laughing and joking around the whole time. And I felt such a sense of, look, I was working to live. I wasn't living to work. I was there. I made money, but I had a schedule that really allowed me to tap into my most creative time and use that to create art and do things that I wanted to do in my life, that I always felt like I basically, by the time I went to work, I was like kind of tired and whatever. It's like how you feel when you get home from a 9 to 5. I would sometimes feel that way going into work, but I had used my best energy for myself and my own life prior to that. And I always, when I would end up going in, like I would get energized from my coworkers, from our wonderful customers. Like we just had the best people coming in and out of that store in general. And so anyway, within a few months of taking that job, we got a $2 an hour raise across the board. Everybody there got it. It was something going on in California. I don't really care why we got it, but we got it. So it was really funny how things landed so perfectly. And it was like, I really wanted a job that would allow me to live my life. I wanted a job that would allow me flexibility to travel. I wanted a job where it just wasn't stressful, where I worked in a positive work environment with positive people, generally speaking. And that is exactly what I got. And I got rewarded for choosing that versus choosing what I had already done in the past and choosing what I thought would make more money. Because it turns out, and even the chiropractor said in the interview, the range that he had, the top range, which is what I believed I deserved, having done that job before and having had experience doing it and having been a nurse in the past, like I knew I would bring a lot of valuable skills to that job. He said that that top end was basically reserved for like once you had been there for a while, like, and you stayed there and your experience. And so it was going to basically be his personal interpretation of how I was doing. And it was going to be his personal decision on when those raises would happen. Whereas like at the job with Trader Joe's, I literally got a raise every 6 months. And just for doing my job and doing it well and working well with other people, which is a strength of mine that I already knew going into it. So yeah, I am sharing this basically to just say, like, don't choose the thing that seems to fit the most in terms of what looks good on paper. Never choose what looks good on paper over your gut intuitive feeling about it. Your own observations of the energy of a place, of the energy of people, your own feeling about how it feels when you walk into a place, And I can only imagine my experience at the other place. It would have been this like Monday through Friday. I doubt you could take time off if you're a new employee. I'm sure it would have been a whole thing to get vacation time, because generally small offices like that run on just a few staff members. And so I know it because I've worked in that before. And the beautiful thing about Trader Joe's was that there were over 100 of us there. We all did everything. So if you went somewhere, somebody could always fill in your place. Like, there was never a moment where they were going to really miss you, which actually was a thing of beauty, because you could just go and travel when you wanted to. So anyway, yeah, I just felt to share this, and this is backtracking a little bit from where I am currently, which I'll share more about as time goes on, but I just wanted to put this out there for somebody who is thinking about what they want to do moving forward, who knows what they want to create, but they don't know if it exists. Look, you can create anything. The idea that you have for the kind of work that you want already exists. You just have to have the courage and the intuitive guidance be your guiding force in order to get it. So you can't just nab up the first thing that shows up because you're scared that there won't be anything else. You can't just take what's there and settle, even though that's not what you really want, that's not what you set out to get, just because they're the ones who offer you the job first or the interview first. Trust the unfolding of your life. Trust that you're able to manifest anything that you want in this reality when you follow your own spirit's guidance, which is your intuition, which is connected to your heart. When you do that, beautiful things happen and you land right where you need to be, right where you want to be, right in the place that you created because of a thought that you had and a vision that you had for your life. So don't settle until you get that vision, because it exists. Everything exists in this reality. It's just a matter of tapping into it and being open and receptive to finding it, and okay with the wait in the meantime. I hope you have a gorgeous day. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.